Okay, I'm really starting now. It's been 15 minutes of small talk. Rome, enough. We have to make a podcast happen. Welcome back to the podcast. You're joining an exclusive club of the return guests today.
Is it?
But
Is
yeah,
it?
yeah, I'll mail you a jacket in the mail and send you a ring, the second timer club.
I'm a medium and my ring size is 9.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. Uh but okay, Rome, for
Yes.
those individuals who, for whatever reason, did not hear you on the first episode and they don't know who you are, and they're like intrigued by the title, whatever I'm going to title this episode,
It'll
how do
be great.
you describe yourself? Like, who are you? What's your deal? Who's
Oh,
Rome?
who is Rome? I've been trying to figure that out throughout my entire life, but I guess in the Newtonian sense, I am
Newtonian sense. Okay.
I am a psychedelic facilitator. I own a microdosing integration company. I am a friend, a daughter, a sister, um, sometimes lover, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay. I feel like that's a whole conversation in itself. But we're going to talk about microdosing and mental health and therapy and trauma today. When when you say that you own a microdose company, like for someone that's listening that's maybe heard that word but doesn't have any idea what it is or what it means, maybe we can start at the beginning.
Yeah, let's start with the basics. So microdosing is taking normally about 10% of something called a macro dose, which is a full dose of either mushrooms or let's say LSD or San Pedro. So typically it's 10% of that. It's taking a tiny amount and it's subperceptual. You will not hallucinate. You will not be impaired in your ability to drive or work or socialize. Typically, there's always exceptions, but I'd say like over 95% of the time, it's totally you can go through your life on a microdose. And not only that, it may enhance your ability to go through life as it can increase focus, um, mood enhancement, connects you to your heart, puts you in your body. And through that can help you connect to the people around you on a deeper level. I call it a karmic accelerator, in that it kind of brings the lessons on faster, the wisdom on faster, the downloads up faster. So it's a time saver for sure. And also, I think it's an authenticity medicine. And there's been a lot of research around authenticity being the highest vibration, even higher than love. We can feel people's authenticity in our hearts and in our bones. So, it's been really, really beautiful in my friend circle, with my family, and in business, because even in business, I get to come from a more authentic place and say, hey, here's where I'm coming from. Here's what I'm doing. Are you in? Are you not? And then I get to just tap into like the people that are on the same page with me are my people, and we will work together, and there's nothing that can stop that from happening. And inversely, if someone is not meant to be, if it's not the right frequency, there's nothing that can make it a successful partnership in any part of your life.
Hmm.
So it really weeds things out and just kind of clarifies everything for people.
Yeah. I'm recognizing there's probably even a step before the basics, which is like the public disclaimer liability release for me talking about this kind of stuff.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we're discussing drugs,
Mhm.
but none of this is medical advice.
Nope.
Consult a doctor,
Yes.
consult your local laws and regulations. All of
I don't know if I agree with that one.
but
Let's-
well, consulting, uh, do your own research.
Yes.
Don't sue us. These are just opinions
No.
expressed freely.
I'll help you out.
Yeah.
Jeremy is not responsible for
Yes.
for what I say, for the content. He is not recommending anything. He's just giving this platform to have this conversation.
Yes.
And And yes, if, we actually, especially with, autoimmune and SSRI, we have our clients, work closely with their psychiatrists or work closely with their doctors and their naturopaths. We dot a lot of I's and cross a lot of T's to make sure that this is safe. And that's really our main function is safe access, integration, prep work, making sure that you're getting the most out of microdosing, because you know what the real tragedy would be? The real tragedy would be to just do this unintentionally and it doesn't work, and then you don't think that it works. And so now this tool that you could have had in your life, you've discarded because you didn't know. It didn't properly launch in your life. So we're really, really good for the beginning of the journey. Some people
Mm.
love to stay with us because they like the support.
Right. And so just to summarize, you've got a business called Mycology Psychology, which is a brilliant name also. Like as a writer, I'm like, yo, that's clever.
Fire.
Mycology Psychology, whereby you give therapy and supplement that therapy with microdosing of small amounts of drugs
Mhm,
that help to expand, expedite, catalyze
mhm,
change
mhm.
in a meaningful way. Is
Yeah,
that
and
fair?
that's super fair. And I want to add that, like, even going back to basics, it just, yes, this is the part where it's expansive, but in the beginning, it's often like, I'm just really depressed and I can't get out of bed, or I'm really anxious around people, or I'm just generally anxious. I feel like there's something always wrong. I have this unprocessed trauma. I have pain in my body from holding all this unprocessed trauma in our body. So, yes, it's great for focus, athletic ability, expansion, karmic acceleration, and all of that stuff. But at its core, it's a helper, and we live in a society where, honestly, I don't think we're meant to be living this way, which is why we have a mental health crisis happening. Why so many people are getting sick. There's, poison in our food. There is poison in the water. We have to pay extra to not get poisoned, shopping at really expensive places and all this type of stuff. So it really shows you how hard everybody is working at trying to keep their homeostasis. And this is a helper in this society. And yes, it comes from indigenous society, but at the same time, it's really valuable in modern society because it takes us back to our roots of the way of life that we're supposed to be living. It's a reminder.
Hmm. How did you first get into this? Like you were a therapist and then you discovered psilocybin or
Well, I
what?
would say I'm more of a, like a coach facilitator. Um, and I do therapy with clients, but I am not a licensed therapist. How I got into this is, as we talked about on the last podcast, is my own journey of healing. I had been through a lot, and then I went through a lot with mental health care and medical care, a lot of malpractice, a lot of mishandling, a lot of not understanding trauma, and how it affects health and the psyche. So, they say be the change you want to see in the world. So I'm just trying to make the change that I would have wanted, 10 years ago. So it's people that are in the position that I was in, mainly, that's why I started this, so that they're like, they have a place to go to really holistically heal and also work with someone that treats them like a co-pilot instead of a patient. A lot of trauma, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety stems from disempowerment. At some point, you were in a situation and you felt like you had no power to protect yourself or be in your truth. So that's where it stems from. So why would we go to doctors that make us feel disempowered? It's curing disempowered with disempowerment. And I'm a fan of homeopathy, but I don't think it applies here. So it's very much someone that listens to you and meets you where you're at, because nobody knows what it's like to be you better than you. You, Jeremy, are the expert on being Jeremy. It doesn't matter what training anybody else has. So that's kind of part of our core mission statement, is that we don't bring this with authority and that we know best. We are here to help you get in touch with your own intuition and find your own inner healer.
I like that. I hadn't heard the disempowerment angle before, but it set up when I'm considering a doctor-patient relationship, it often feels like a hierarchical
Mhm.
power imbalance whereby one person is pedestalized and the other is seeking or struggling in some way.
Yeah.
And it
And sorry, go ahead.
no, and it sounds like here is sort of life coaching is the thing that comes to mind, at least the way that I interact with clients, which is like, yo, I'm just a dude
Yeah.
and I got my own stuff, but I can ask a lot of good questions and I believe in you and I can help you clarify a few things and I got your back.
Yeah.
And I've often said to people, like, I don't care what you choose to do. Like, it's your choice, it's your
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
Like, no judgment, all love. I trust the process. But like, I just want to help clear out all of the things in the way so that you can be really clear about the decision you're making and why you're making that choice. And like, perhaps it's intention cultivation or something like that. But it sounds similar to the work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's relational, right? And we get traumatized in relationship, we heal in relationship, right? So if there's no if it's not relational, then there's a part of the person that never gets to fully come online, right? And just kind of be in it together and be like, "Hey, look, you're going to climb this mountain in your own way, but I've climbed this mountain, and here are my notes from what I've learned. But it's your path."
Yeah, there's many ways up the mountain.
Yeah.
So when you're working with an individual, or I'm trying to put myself in the position of someone listening that's like, all right, I'm intrigued. I've never done this before. I've never done drugs. I've
Mhm.
heard stories about magic mushrooms where people jump off buildings by turning into an eagle, or
Sure.
there's lots of horrible stories out there.
Yes.
Uh, what would be the like, does this stuff work? Does it really work? I mean, is it just a gimmick? If you can't feel it, is anything really happening? I'm like trying to put my devil's advocate hat on for a
Yeah.
moment.
No, I'm very good at the devil's advocate part because there's nothing to prove. It's not for everybody, right? It's not for absolutely everybody. And the only way that you can really figure out if it's for you is if you're being called to it to give it a try. If you're not being called to it, if it's not interesting to you, if there's not something in your body that's like, oh, tell me more, you're probably one of those people it's not for, right? The other piece is that yes, people have someone has jumped off, maybe a few people have jumped off buildings because of mushrooms. Well, set and setting. This is why education is so much more important than regulation, right? Because people are not going to always listen to regulation. We're going to do what we're going to do. But education, hey, what state of mind are you in? Is the location safe? Is the location okay? Are you with someone you trust? Right? Do you have a trip sitter? Do you have a psychedelic facilitator? These are powerful, powerful medicines. And yes, they are drugs in a sense. We are drugs. Um, but we call it medicine because drugs are great. I'm just going to end the sentence there, but drugs are great for escaping, right? And I wouldn't say, well, yes, it's great for escaping. And that's why people become addicted to them because they work. But this isn't a drug in that you can't escape yourself when you're microdosing. It's actually putting you even more in touch with what's going on inside of you and opening up your heart and helping you find the love in your heart. Um, and yeah, I've had people be like, I don't know if it's working. And well, then we have a conversation first. And oftentimes something will come up as in, hey, I pulled over on the side of the road and I just started crying about something that happened when I was a kid, but this isn't working. Expectations of primer, they don't know that that is actually one of the ways that microdose can work. They think, oh, just mood enhancement, right? Or this person normally really pisses me off. And I noticed today that I didn't feel tightening in my body around them. So that's another subtle way microdose can work. Or it can just be this like very low whisper of intuition of like, oh, I don't like that anymore. And there's people who realize they don't like their jobs anymore. They don't like their relationships anymore. And there's not always something you can do about it in the moment. So that's why it's really good to work with a coach or a facilitator to help make sense of what the medicine is bringing up. And it's such a big range. It's all the way from mood enhancement, focus, and athletic performance to life-changing downloads, things that will totally put you on a different trajectory. And with microdose, the trajectory may change only 2 degrees, maybe even 1 degree, right? But if you keep walking, you're going to end up, if I was walking to you in Canada, right?
Mm,
And my trajectory changed by 1 degree. Well, many, many, many miles later, I'm going to end up miles away from you, even though my trajectory changed by just 1 degree. And it's a short life, but it's a long life. And it's putting you on a different trajectory and one that is of the highest good.
hmm. Um, I know that you're biased, but looking forward in a crystal ball into the future, do you see this as like a core part of what could be a government health policy? Like I know they've done a lot of groundbreaking studies on depression and anxiety and utilizing a suite of formerly uh, negative substances or
Sure.
chemicals and are
Yeah.
having some tremendous breakthroughs around PTSD and the like. So w- looking forward 10, 20, 50 years, like what does our healthcare system look like? Like what would be the ideal, like Rome his president for a week? Like what are the changes that you would initiate?
Oof, that's a big question. And I think
Yeah.
about this all the time, and I cannot come up with an answer of what it's going to look like. But I will say this, in an ideal world, this would be not just psychedelics, but not healthcare, but death care would be part of the equation in allopathic medicine, meaning it's not about fixing things all the time. We're always trying to fix things, right? Where the body is actually perfect. And when illness pops up, it's actually letting us know that there's something that we need to deal with, either physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. Our body is just communicating to us. And we've been taught to go like this: shh, shut up. That's inconvenient. I don't want to hear it. And then what becomes really inconvenient is the chemotherapy bills 15 years later, because you didn't tend to yourself in that moment in a way that was head on, right? So I'd love for this to be the first line of defense before going on pharmaceuticals. And I'm not anti-pharmaceutical. I think there's instances where they're appropriate, because we don't live in tribes anymore. We live in this world now. But what was I saying? Yes. So I think that I lost my train of thought. What were we saying?
You were going to be president and that
Oh, I'm going to be president.
yeah.
Okay, there's a joke there. Okay, so if I was president, we would have this as part of the medical model as the first line of defense. We would be in illness prevention instead of trying to fix the illness afterwards. We would work more with psychoneuroimmunology, meaning, what is your emotional life like? What was your childhood like? What's going on in your world right now? What feels out of alignment? What's putting pressure on you? Where are you not allowed to be yourself? Right? These things all play into the way our body expresses things, the way our genetics express things. And then with the death care piece, not trying to keep people alive past the point of what is humane. So, in hospitals, they're just trying to keep you alive, even past the point of humanity. And it's expensive, it's hard on the family, and it's hard on the patient. So, really, changing our relationship with death, I think, will be very healing for us collectively. That it's not this terrible thing to be avoided. If we can prevent it, that's wonderful. But when it comes knocking and when the body is naturally winding down, to trust the cycle of life, to trust the syntropy and the entropy of the universe that we live in, and I think we are immortal forever. And that is not a very scientific thing to say in this moment, but it will be, because these are just ideas that science hasn't proven yet. And speaking of science, the research is extremely, extremely important. And our ancestors have done this research for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years. Okay. The reason for modern day research is to bring on board the uninitiated through something tangible so that they can reach the intangible. And when you reach the intangible, you no longer need proof or explanation.
That's interesting. So that the research, because I'm laughing because my partner is very fluent in the woo woo,
Mhm.
and sometimes I'll read something on Twitter or the internet, and I'll say things like, "Oh, wow, they just did this study and they found that X, Y, and Z," and she'll just look at me and be like, "Well, yeah, it's obvious. Like
Yeah.
that seems true to me." Uh,
Get on her level, Jeremy.
I
Catch up.
know. There's something though in me that really appreciates the like scientific rigor to explore a specific thing and to test it and to verify it and to replicate it and then to come to conclusions and tease those apart and be like, okay, this actually is what is happening versus making that leap towards I've heard it described as I'm not brave enough for faith. You heard a line like this of
Like that,
like
yeah.
it just seems like a jump to be like, well, yeah, it's been done for thousands of years. But like, drink this, take this, try this. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe we could like run an experiment first.
I don't think that there's a right or wrong, and I think you both have salient points. And this is not me being diplomatic. This is, it's really, first of all, I think you're probably a fan of questions because science is about questions more than it is about answers. So you have a curious mind and you like the process, it's fascinating to you, and it's something satisfying about proving or disproving something, whether you already knew it or not. Like, there's that validation that we need as human beings, that our egos need, that our minds need. And it can actually help us, stay safe, in this modern world. So I'm really on board with the research. I'm hoping that, I'm hoping that the research is legitimate. And, I say that because sometimes there's special interests, but, you're right. I am completely biased. And I'm completely biased in that this helped me save my life. And I've seen it work for so many people. It's the most effective treatment that I've ever seen in my life. And I have been on almost every medication and been to almost every type of therapy or doctor. And it was all good. But until I found mushrooms and ayahuasca, um, and all the other entheogens, I wasn't able to feel all that stuff in my body. I only knew it in my mind. Okay, be positive, or this, or that, or my therapist told me this, or take this pill, and it got me through many years. But until I was able to feel it in my heart, it wasn't like true for me, right? And
Yeah.
and and that's just me and a lot of
That,
other people.
yeah, that's fair. Just jumping on that a little bit more, like, how do you describe the distinction between having positivity and gratitude in your head and then moving it into your system and your
Yeah.
heart? Like to
Okay.
somebody that's listening
Uh,
or somebody that's hosting a podcast right now.
So
Uh,
for whoever's listening, Jeremy's question is coming from the mind.
mm,
Right? Because it's a question, and really a lot of answers come from the heart. And I think that's one way to differentiate it. You know, there's, yeah, I love my family. Like, they're a pain in my ass. I love them. There's some question in that, right? Or is it okay to speak to this person that hurt me? There's a lot of analyzation. Our brains only care about keeping us safe. Okay. It's an overprotective parent because ultimately it wants to keep itself safe. So you got to know the brain doesn't care about happiness. The brain doesn't care about love. The brain doesn't care about inner knowing. The brain wants to scan, check, verify, are we safe? And if we've been through, let's say, a dark path, our brain's not going to be like, that's not good for us. Our brain, it's a pattern maker. It wants to go to what's familiar because it's like, well, we know how to handle this, even though it sucked, right? The heart just is. It just is. And it just is love. And there's not a lot of questions in the heart. I think that's the best way I can answer it. And also, I've noticed that the body gives you indicators. When I'm in my heart, my shoulders are dropped. My nervous system feels, more flexible. And when I'm in my head, I'm like thinking and I'm getting tighter and I'm getting tighter. And I'm not saying stop thinking. That's not what I'm telling people. Yes, think. Yes, be human. Yes, we live in the 3D. Yes, we live in in systems. We need to use our brains. And if we're all heart, we're going to get our asses kicked. We're going to get taken advantage of. We're going to, not be able to go through life super clearly. We need both. And really, the answer of truth is always both ends of the spectrum. If there's a coin, there's heads or tails, or is it a coin? It's a coin. It's both.
Yeah, that's good. I'm reminded of that yin and yang or yin and yang symbol with
Yeah.
the black and the white thing,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and that the main point is that line between the two. It's like trying to operate there where you have
I've never,
access to both.
I've never heard that before. I love it and I'm going to use it.
Okay.
But everybody heard it here first.
Yeah, yeah, I just made that up. That was definitely not somebody from the internet years ago.
Yeah, you
Uh,
got it.
but what I'm hearing from you is like, yo, we need to think, we need to use our heads. Don't be a knucklehead.
Right.
Um, and we need to use our hearts, but you can't just live in that heart space um
We don't
and
have that.
just float through life as butterfly. It's like,
Yeah. But we don't have that problem. We don't have a problem that the collective is living too much in their heart. We have a problem that the collective is living too much in their head and just trying to create some balance there.
hmm. And then how much of the work that you do with clients, whether that's working through PTSD, depression, anxiety, is about getting them more into their heart space and out of their heads? Is that like a core part of it?
Absolutely. Because PTSD will kick you out of your heart. It will kick you out of your whole body, right? And so now with PTSD or CPTSD, your head has been divorced from your body and it's all from here up. It's analytical, it's looping, it's what if, right? And meanwhile, we are accumulating all of this energy in our body that we're not tending to, which is why people with trauma tend to get body pain, tend to get fibromyalgia, they tend to get sick, they tend to get cancer, because there's all this unprocessed stuff in the body that's not being tended to because they're too busy just living in the head. So, reuniting the head with the body. Notice it's reuniting, not getting rid of the head. We still need it, but reuniting the head and the body where you can tap into like head, heart, gut. You can tap into all three brains. We have three brains.
I picture it almost like an awkward first date. If you were like a blind date between the head and the heart, and you're
Yes.
like, head, this is heart, heart, this is head. And it's like, hey, and it's you don't know each other and you're kind of like trying to make small talk. And
And
then
they're
after a
not sure.
while, yeah, not sure of one another, kind of sizing each other up, like not sharing too much about what's really going on. But then
Right.
maybe second date, third date, fourth date,
Or
start to build that
microdose.
yeah, microdose is like a dating coach sitting right beside them.
Yes. It's like a
Like,
dating coach or like a drink,
oh yeah, social lubricant.
a social lubricant, and by the way, I have social anxiety. I
Hmm.
haven't had it my whole life. It's been an on and off thing. And I got to tell, and I don't drink. I haven't drank since I was 21 years old. Oh my God. Okay. So it's been over 20 years.
I was gonna say, for those listening, Rome is older than 22.
Yeah. I'm
Uh,
older than, I thought you were going to be like older than time. Uh, yeah, I'm in my 40s and I don't really get to or want to have a drink to, feel comfortable at a party, but microdose pretty much does the same thing for me. It puts me in my body, my nervous system's more calm. Um, it puts me in the observer. So, we have the default mode network of the brain. It's made up of three parts of the brain and they're in communication with each other. And this is the self-referential part of the brain. It's the part that holds the ego of like, oh my God, I tripped and fell in front of all these people. This means I'm a loser. This means I'm clumsy. I'm never going to get anything right, and going down that story pathway. So microdosing disconnects the default mode network. And if you trip and fell in front of a bunch of people, it turns into, the person that I am just tripped and fell in front of a bunch of people. Hmm. So you're more of an observer, right? You don't feel like this means something about you. So you take that and you kind of apply it to everything in your life. And when things are not personal and all about you, you don't have to have all these defenses up. So really, you get to just really be in your heart more. And when you're in your heart, your life will open up around you. Better people will show up because we live in a mirror universe. What's going on inside of me is going to go on around me, right? And this is not to say that if bad things are happening to you and people hurt you, that you deserve it because this thing is inside of you. No, it's just a reflection of something that you need to learn and maybe step away from, right? So it's also an amazing reflector. It's like having a little coach in your head. And yeah, it's just, I think we just need more heart and less smarts because we can be so smart that we can outsmart ourselves.
Oh, yes, I'm familiar with this
Yeah.
sentence.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, the other thing is that our brains are so intimate with us that they know exactly what levers to pull, what buttons to push, what excuses to bring up, what stories to convince.
Yeah.
Like, it's very easy to manipulate ourselves. But I was just sort of zoning out momentarily, thinking about how mushrooms just grow in the ground and you can just pick them and have a little sample of certain kinds, and suddenly your depression might be eased or your heart space might be expanded. Uh, it's fucking weird, Rome, that these things just grow in the forest, isn't it? Like, it's
All of
fucking
this is
weird.
all of this is weird though, right? Like
All of it is weird.
what are my arms? Like what are they? What are my I don't understand. Like I look at my hands and I'm like, well, I don't know the point sometimes. Like what is this? This is so weird. Why do we have to put something called food in the hole in our face 3 times a day? And then sometimes we'll go to a different location and sit at a table with other people and then we all put it in the holes in our face together.
Yeah.
Why? Why do we go to bed and close our eyes and then go somewhere else and then come back?
You know what's wild about that? I'm glad we've touched on rabbit holes and ridiculousness finally. But like when you go to bed, you have to pretend to sleep before sleep arrives.
Yes. Yes.
You have to just like close your eyes and lay perfectly still, but you're still awake. You just have to like do it until you become it,
Until you
which
be
I think is
that's a
so,
metaphor.
it's so analogous to life. It's like just do everything like you fall asleep. It's like you actually put yourself in the place, do the thing, show up every day, repeat, and like eventually you'll sleep.
Eventually you'll sleep. And then you'll develop the belief that if you lay down and close your eyes, you will get this outcome because you've done it for so many nights. So now there's no doubt,
Yeah.
right? Unless you have insomnia, in which case I'm really sorry. That's awful. Also, something microdosing can help with
I was
50.
gonna say, if only there was a fix for that that was all natural.
For that, Amanita muscaria is really good. For some people, the mushroom,
Amanita, is that not like a poison one? Do I have that right?
yes,
What's
but
the
no.
bright, like it looks like a bright red with white dots. Is that the one?
Yes, that's the one. If it is prepared properly, it has muscimol and ibotenic acid. Um, the ratio has to be just so. So if it is decarb, I never
What
can get
ha but if the ratio's,
decarboxylated. Hmm?
yeah, but if the ratio's not just so, like it's deadly, it'll make you blind. There's something bad.
Well, you'd have to look, you'd probably have to eat it out of the ground raw, or it would be prepared
Okay.
wrong, or have a like a bunch. And remember, this again is microdosing, and it's been, and I don't want to get this word wrong, but I'm gonna give it a shot. Decarboxylated. If anybody's listening and I got that word wrong, just know I know that I may have gotten that word wrong. But that's the process it goes through. And we've had really incredible results with Amanita, which is legal in most states, by the way. Um, and I'll tell you why it's legal in most states, even though it's the more poisonous one, because you can't grow it in a lab. It can only be harvested in the wild. So it's non-scalable.
And so for that reason, it's legal.
Yeah,
That's
I
weird.
believe that's why it's legal, because there's no money to be made, right? So it doesn't need to be, there's no gatekeeping happening for Amanita. So It
Mm.
helps a lot with PMS, PMDD, menopause, insomnia, and addiction and alcohol, like alcoholism, benzos, because it works on the GABA receptors, where psilocybin works on the serotonin receptors. It's a serotonergic. So these are two totally different medicines, but they're both mushrooms.
I like what you said about um, that that if you take too much of it, it's dangerous.
Yes.
It's potentially causing all kinds of bad things to happen. But at scale, if you take just a little bit of something that's really dangerous, it becomes
Medicine.
healing
Mhm.
medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of like the idea, like behind, the poison is the cure, or you can't heal without a wound.
Mm.
Um, there's something about taking a microdose of it where it's just you're getting just enough. But at the same time, it's not poisonous if you're taking it in that small amount, right? So yeah, it's just we have all these things growing out of the ground, right? And I like to think of them as keys. It's like you're in a video game and there's the monsters and there's my coach and I talk about this all the time. Bowser on the bridge in Super Mario Brothers, he just did a post about it. He's amazing. um his name on Instagram is the HRV guy, but THA. um so we talk a lot about this video game reality that we're in. And yeah, we have, levels that we need to get through and level up and all that stuff. But in Super Mario Brothers, he finds the mushroom and he eats the mushroom and he becomes bigger and more unstoppable. And it's just kind of a metaphor for these tools that are growing out of the ground where the universe is like, yes, people die, people lose jobs, shitty things happen. It's part of being human. There's a lot of suffering in being human, but also here are these tools that are growing out of the ground for you. And here's dogs and here's cats and here's music. It's the universe's way of apologizing.
Yeah. Sorry about the death thing, but
Yeah.
here's some treats and
Yeah.
puppies.
And those treats actually help you wrap your head around the death thing and all those other things, right? And
Mm.
that's why they're here. They're
Yeah.
helpers. They are an operating manual that grows out of the ground. That's that's what they are.
That is a far out concept. Like
Yeah.
like what if mushrooms are just the apex of life itself? Like what if mushrooms are the world and we're all just like, these little ants running around, but the mushrooms are in control.
The mushrooms are in control. The mushrooms
Cool.
are absolutely in control. The mushrooms are, so first of all, we're part of nature. We've just decided as humans that we made it a hierarchy, right? And we don't treat the earth as if it's a living, breathing, sentient thing. We don't. We pretended it was a dead planet and just started pillaging it. The truth is, mycelium, which is the root of the mushroom, runs underneath. If you're standing anywhere, there's probably mycelium beneath you. Okay. It's all over the world. It is the internet of the world, and it is the neural pathways of the planet. And trees feed each other information, nutrients, and warnings, even, and all sorts of things through mycelium. So, they'll even keep trees that have been cut down, they'll try to keep the trunk alive. All the trees are pitching in and sending nutrients through the mushroom to the other trees. We have mushrooms that can break down plastic. Antibiotics come from mushrooms, but they are a sentient thing that is almost looking over us and is living underneath us, and they're omnipresent. And we think we're in charge and we think we're choosing to take mushrooms, but the mushrooms have chosen to meet our nervous system. They chose us. So this is why I always say, like, if you're not getting that inkling inside of you of, oh, I want to try microdosing or I want to try mushrooms, that just means they're not reaching out to you, which means it's probably not for you.
But if you have a little whisper calling
Mhm.
you, like, oh,
Mhm.
that sounds interesting. I want to try that.
And sit with it.
Is that the first, like, how do you direct people to get into this space then?
I do
I,
not direct people to get in.
okay, that's a bad question. If
Yeah.
If somebody was feeling called to explore this area that they've heard so much about in books, podcasts, TV
Sure, yeah.
shows, etc., do you have any advice for those people as a professional operating in this industry?
Yes. First, I want to say we're not the only ones that have this business model anymore. There's plenty of others out there. And I love that because there's actually no shortage of people that need this medicine, and it needs to be all hands on deck. Try to find a microdosing company, either us or someone like us, that you have a preparation call where you get to talk to someone and make sure that you're a good candidate. They can whisper to you, and that's wonderful, but people that we won't give medicine to, or people who have schizophrenia, tend to get hospitalized for manic episodes, and so there's a vetting process, and this is where we go to mind and heart, right? So there's heart, it's calling out to me, I feel like it's right for me, I feel like there's something there for me, and then let's use our brains and go about this in the most responsible way possible. And it's really important to go about this the responsible way for the reason I mentioned earlier, which is if you do it right the first time, right, then you know that it's something that works and it's a tool you can have for the rest of your life. Um, and secondly, if people use this all irresponsibly, I think it'll go away, and that would be a shame. And it's happened before.
Go away by being outlawed or regulated away?
Outlawed, regulated, taboo, right? I think it was the second wave. Timothy Leary was like dosing everyone with LSD, and then it was like, oh, okay, like these are crazy people. These are crazy people. And then, Reagan came. It was just all like, and then you didn't hear anything for a long time, right? And
Mm.
then this gave pharma a lot of room. It gave OxyContin a lot of room. It gave a lot of things room that now we're having to clean up. So, yeah, this is a gift, and with gifts come responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm as woo woo and hippy dippy as anyone else, but I know that we live on Earth, and we need to be responsible.
Oh, so you believe in Earth,
I
do
believe in
you?
Earth, and I
Oh,
I
one of
don't know if
those.
it's flat or round. I don't care.
Yeah, but I think you've raised an important point, and I think it's something going back a few moments ago about the importance of scientific rigor in that it's one thing to have a bunch of people say, "Hey, take this thing, it helps me feel this way." But when a reputable organization like Johns Hopkins goes and does some research and publishes in one of the most prestigious
Yeah,
scientific journals around, that legitimizes the
absolutely.
medicine, and it helps to, as you said, like, direct people towards the intangible.
Well, I wanna take it a step further. So, to your point, the mushrooms are in charge, right? And so because the mushrooms are in charge, they are using this is gonna sound far out there to you, maybe not your girlfriend, right? Maybe not your
Okay.
partner. But the mushrooms are using Johns Hopkins to get out there. The mushrooms use Instagram to get out there. The mushrooms are using you and I right now to get out there. We work for them.
Mm, okay. And what is the long-term goal of the mushrooms? Global domination? The
Probably.
eradication of suffering?
Uh, no, I don't think well, that's a very big question, and I haven't received that message yet. I think it's like kind of not the destination, it's the journey, right? It's just life experiencing itself. It's the universe experiencing itself through us and our relationship through this medicine.
Mm,
Because, you've heard we're all one, right? And then, the universe kind of fractaled out into all of these different beings so that it can experience itself. And we lose touch with that. We lose touch with love. We lose touch with the planet. We lose touch with why we're here. So I think more than anything else, the mushrooms just want to tell us the truth. It's just about the truth. And I think the truth is actually the most healing thing, talking about the frequency of authenticity, right? So it's not about covering up suffering or getting rid of suffering. A lot of suffering is a lie, by the way. A lot of suffering is a lie that's manufactured by the brain in order to keep us safe, like that overprotective parent. And the mushrooms pull you back from that and tell you the truth. And once you know the truth, then that tends to alleviate suffering. And sometimes the truth is a hard pill to swallow, but once you deal with it, again, at the end of the day, the truth has alleviated the suffering. Truth.
Can you give an example of either your own life or a patient whereby that distinction between suffering and truth has been um, clarified,
Mhm.
right? So, like, I'm imagining someone living in a state of suffering as a consequence of the thoughts or the patterns happening in their brain.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking through this idea that with a perspective shift or a different understanding of things, then that truth is revealed in a different context. But I would love to hear what you think about that.
Tell me if I'm answering your question or not. But truth is medicine, right? And sometimes medicine tastes bad. And sometimes it's great, right? Sometimes we'll take something, we'll instantly feel better. Sometimes we'll take something and it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's medicine at the end of the day. And it's medicine that will perhaps in certain times make some people feel disillusioned. But what is the opposite of being disillusioned? It's being illusioned, right? So it's really up to you if you want to live in that truth and look at it because it's very rewarding. And it reminds me of that quote, a hero dies only one death, but a coward dies 1,000 deaths. And so avoiding the truth, we die every single day in small increments. We often microdose our suffering too, you know, to the point where it's just we become numb to it and don't do anything about it. We don't put our foot down and say, hey, something has to change until, until we do.
Right. And so those stories that we tell ourselves that cause suffering that feel so true,
Yeah,
you're suggesting that there are different truths to consider? Is that the idea?
absolutely. Well, I mean,
Like, how do you help somebody that comes to you that's depressed, has PTSD, can't sleep, whatever, um, and they know that they're in pain and that they know this is how their life has unfolded and this is how the world works, and they're in this kind of like the blockers are on. They
yeah,
see the world in a certain way, and that lens is causing suffering. So,
yes.
like, as a practitioner, what's the sort of lens through which you view all of that, or the
Yeah.
process that you're like, okay, hang on, you're at step one, like we're gonna get you over here.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to answer that. And I felt a metaphor coming on. Um,
Oh,
so it's like, we plant the seeds and the microdosing can be like the water, but we still have to do the work and plant the seeds and tend to the garden. Um, if someone comes to us with depression, anxiety, PTSD, illness, first of all, we meet people where they're at. There is no should or you have to do this and you don't know what's good for you, as we discussed, right? You just meet people where they're at, heart to heart. I hear you, I feel you, I see you, because that's really all we want as human beings. And the limbic system in our brain that is part of the protection system loosens only after being acknowledged. That's why I don't believe in like the spiritual bypassing of like, just stay positive. No, sometimes you have to feel these really, really difficult emotions. We work with them to put together a protocol with the medicine and we explain how the medicine works, right? Because if you don't know how the medicine works, you may miss the message. After you start your protocol, then we assess which direction to go in. Are you one of those people where you took it and you're like, oh my God, this is like an antidepressant. I feel so much better. I can do things. Jeremy, I'm a person that gets into freeze a lot. I get paralyzed when I get overwhelmed. Microdosing has been a gift because it unparalyzes me, right? Then there's people, I've been both people, by the way. Then there's people who are like, oh my God, this is a little scary because I don't think I want to be at my job anymore. How am I going to pay the bills? Right. And so, there's something positive to come out of both, but one of them is a little bit of a slower, more difficult process and more of a hero's journey, where it's like, okay, you don't have to leave your job today, but why don't you continue to work with the medicine or your facilitator to think about like what your ideal life would be? What would you like? What can we move towards one day? Right. Or if it's not possible, what can you change in your environment or in your day-to-day that can help you shore up mentally at your job? So this is something that they weren't aware of before. Or, you know, one time I was on mushrooms, and this is just like a very weird example, but why not? I was eating, the ice cream with the artificial sweetener. I love eating on mushrooms, and it tasted like chemicals. It was so gross suddenly, and I haven't had artificial sweeteners since, and that was 7 years ago, right? So there's many different types of gifts, and, you never know what you're gonna get. It's a DJ. You can make requests to the DJ, and the DJ will probably play your song, but if it's not right for the room, they're not going to. It's gonna give you what you need and not what you want.
Hmm. I like that. That's good. Is there anything that we've not touched on that you're like, yo, Jeremy, I have to say this to the world. I have to shout this from my soapbox.
Yeah. Let's please be nicer to each other. It's just so depressing. Like, what the F? I
Yeah.
go on Instagram and I go on Twitter, and I get it. I get that the internet is not a safe place, but it is a reflection. The internet is its own dimension. And in this dimension, people are being really, really mean to each other. And I think it's a symptom of a larger problem. You know, um, a lot of this, like, not meeting each other where we're at. We really are, and I know I'm about to sound very hippie, but we really are brothers and sisters. Um, and another thing is follow your intuition. And the difference between intuition and fear is that intuition is quiet, right? And in the heart, and fear is in the head and really, really loud. Um, and that, you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to do it alone. There's a lot of helpers that have climbed the mountain, that know the topography, that are here to extend their hand to you. And it's something that I would have wanted for myself and didn't get, right? And so, it's an invitation to change the paradigm of how we show up for each other. Um, I do want to mention that if you're a therapist, or any space holder, we are launching our course. We're closing up registration soon, but we're launching a course called the Holonic Practitioner. And it's how to be hold space for microdosing. And we go all the way from science. We have Hamilton Morris teaching a module, all the way down to ceremony and spirituality, because science and spirituality are not oil and water. They are two sides of the same coin, right? And we need to use everything that's a resource, science, spirituality, because again, it's all hands on deck. It's a very interesting time to be alive. It's a challenging time to be alive. But again, this is the invitation for the paradigm shift. So yeah, we have this course, and what else we have a really, really beautiful, and I am biased, but this is not my feedback. A really beautiful community call the second Saturday of every month called Myco the Gathering. If you have more questions about microdosing, follow us on Instagram, Mycology Psychology. Check out our website, same name. Come to our call the second Saturday of every month. Sign up for a newsletter. There's meditation, breath work, and then education. And this is a place to go for people who normally don't feel safe going to places like this. It's really kind and understanding and non-judgmental and non-performative. There's a lot of like performative bullshit out there,
No. What do
and
you
you can
mean?
feel it. You can
On the
feel it.
internet?
No way.
Stop it. On Instagram, there's performative? No.
Did you not know?
No. What do you
Yeah,
how
yeah.
do you how for those listening, like how do you distinguish between performative and genuine?
Great question. You can feel it in your body.
Hmm.
You can feel it. You know when you get the ick, you know, you can sense it. And a lot of the time we'll be like, nah, that's just me being really hard on someone. And that might be true. We're as hard on other people as we are on ourselves, you know. but people who are hard on themselves tend to question themselves the most. So the work for that person is to really trust that feeling in the body.
If only there was a way to get into the body, if only there was a,
I don't know,
yeah.
let me know if you come up with anything.
Yeah, I would love to interview someone about that topic of helping people get into the body and their hearts and
I'll keep my eyes peeled. I'll
this
keep my ear to the streets.
yeah, it'd be cool if there was like a call every Saturday, every second Saturday that they could
I
just
love you, Jeremy. I love
like
you.
come ask questions and feel supported and held. That'd be
It would be
nice.
lovely. It would be lovely
Maybe one day.
one day.
All right. Well, I love talking to you. I'm a fan of your work. I probably should have led with this, but I have taken your product and like gone through your protocol. You
Oh,
sent me
well, I
I,
can tell.
I you could you could feel you could
I
feel
can
it.
feel it.
Uh that was years ago. I remember when we first connected.
That's crazy.
That would have been how long ago was that? 3 years?
2.5 years, I think. When
Yeah.
you and I, when we did our last podcast, and it's so funny, Jeremy, like I got really nervous about our last podcast. I'm like, did I share too much about, like, are my parents going to listen to this?
Yeah.
Uh, but this was before they were introduced to the mushroom. So, I think I may or may not have shared first time I took mushrooms, my mom busted me and gave me a bunch of pharmaceuticals to end the trip. But
Wow.
she didn't offer any to my friend that I was with, and so my friend was crying all night by herself while I was passed out.
Oh, geez.
And so I love it that she does mushrooms now. And, mid-trip, I have reminded her of this story. And I just feel like we've come such a long way in our family and in society that we're starting to open up to like, there's more. There's more.
So you've guided your parents on a macro dose
I
or
have. Yes, both of
of
them.
how large was the dose?
My mom is a beast. Beast. I've given her 7 grams.
Oh, okay.
I've given her 7 grams. She can handle, she has a high tolerance. And it's so funny with my mother. Every trip she has, she's like, oh, I saw that I'm God. I'm like, that's wonderful, mom. That's really great.
I
And we
guess,
are.
but okay, for those listening that don't know the dosage, the micro dose is usually like 0.1 grams
It can
ish.
be it can be 0.05 to zero point 0.3, right, of a gram. She took,
Right,
right?
right.
5 is a hero dose. My dad's more
Meaning,
sensitive.
how do
A
you
hero dose, it's where your ego dissolves and you become part of the primordial ooze and see all the fractals and become one. It's samadhi, and you may or may not reach that on 5. I don't recommend you start with 5. Some
no, don't do
practical
that.
guides don't do that. That's when the people jump off the buildings. If you're going to take a high dose like that, don't do it by yourself. Um,
But so
and
you fed your mom 7 grams of mushrooms and then guided her through an
yeah,
experience.
yes. She would say I was annoying her in the beginning. So I was
Yikes.
trying to guide her and she was like, get away from me. I was like, okay. It's different with family.
Okay.
Then she came back and like she needed to like kind of go into it. And then later she came back and we did a lot of really beautiful work together and our relationship improved from that day forward, just
Mm.
instantly. I understood her. She understood me on a deeper level. And what I want to say also as a psychedelic facilitator that I think is so important, I really want to get this message out there, is the red flags that you should look for when looking for a
Yes.
guy. Okay. Red flag number 1, they call themselves a healer. Nobody's healing you. You're healing yourself. Okay. It's between you and the medicine, and your own consciousness and your nervous system. We are here to hold space, to witness, to guide if things go a little bit off the rails, and to keep you safe. Right. Um, so I say I'm a healing facilitator, but I'm not a healer. Okay. The other piece is that they don't offer integration and prep work before and after. They should be checking in on you. A lot of times people feel abandoned. And I'm sorry to say this, but as a woman, I think that it's probably the best bet to find a woman to work with. Um, there are some amazing male psychedelic facilitators, but that's more the exception than the rule. And I may get in trouble for saying this, but in my experience, the women have held this medicine a little bit differently. Again, I work with men, and they're wonderful, but you just really, really have to do your research and really get to know them, and tap into that whispering in your heart. Don't tap into your desperation and your desire. Those are the two things that are going to cloud your judgment. If you really, really want something to happen, or if you really, really, really don't want something to happen, you're not seeing clearly.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think just to reiterate, in any kind of I was gonna say fringe, but any kind of like non-conformist sort of space, it is ripe for charlatans,
Mhm,
predators,
mhm,
assholes.
mhm. Yeah,
S-
they
Yeah,
they go where the vulnerable go to get help, because it's
yeah,
like they're ripe for the picking, right? So there's a lot of really amazing people in the space, and there's people that you need to look out for,
yeah.
and
Do your
so
research. Take it
do your research,
seriously.
do
Yeah.
background checks, do
Get
background checks,
referrals from people you trust.
get
Mm.
referrals, but I would say do a background check. It doesn't hurt, because, we had a facilitator that we were working with, and had we done a background check with him, we would have known not to work with him. Luckily, we found out very shortly afterwards. So, this is your mind and your body. And yes, follow your intuition, fall into the medicine, surrender, all of that, but also use your brain, as we've been talking about, and has kind of been the theme of the podcast. It's like the brain alone can't do it, and the heart alone can't do it. It's teamwork.
Mm.
And it's a whole crew.
And they say teamwork makes the dream work, Rome.
Teamwork, yes.
So
Jeremy,
deep.
you're amazing,
Yeah.
Mom. You're
Uh
amazing, Mom.
You're a gem. For those listening, in the show notes, I'll put links to all the stuff that Rome just mentioned, the Instagram, the website, the calls, etc. And I'm gonna throw you under the bus, Rome. If you've got questions, reach out to Rome and
Yeah,
ask
please
her.
do. Uh, uh, Best email is hello@mycolegypsychology.com. Or you
Oh,
can hit us up in the DMs on Instagram.
yeah, I was just gonna do the Instagram, but
Yeah.
hello at mycology psychology. I'll put that in the show notes. Is that cool if they're like, no, she doesn't really want to hear from me? You're saying like, no, ask me
No,
questions, like
please,
reach out.
please reach out. But here's a very important point. Please don't use any P words in writing.
What does that mean?
Psilocybin, psychedelics.
All right.
Yeah. So when you email us or reach out to us, just don't use those two words. You can say mushroom, medicine, protocol, and we will respond. When people put those words in writing, we just do not respond. And it's not because we don't want to, but it's just for the safety of everybody.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's it, I think.
That's it.
Uh, Thanks for coming back. Thanks for all you do. I just adore and respect the way that you show up in the world. I
Thank you. You too, Jeremy.
believe in the work that you're doing. It's important. It's powerful.
Thank you.
And
We're
hopefully,
vibration, buddy.
yeah, hopefully we get to meet in real life one day,
That would be
rather than just Zoom.
I
Uh,
know. And
like,
and maybe there's like I know there's a jacket or a ring for second time. I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
wait. Am I gonna
yeah.
there gonna be a car, or I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
it's in
I'm
the
scared.
mail. It's for sure in the mail. So
Okay.
keep a real close eye out.
Okay.
Uh,
Thank you.
um,
Thank you for having me.
you're
I
welcome.
love your page. I love your work, and I love you. I think you're awesome. Thank you.
Back at you.